Oh yeah, you're good.
Do I need to?
Oh yeah, there you go.
You're all set.
Okay. I know, and you guys can have a seat wherever you like.
Good to see you, brother. Any seats open? Who's this? Hi, Katrina. How are you? Are you related to Katrina? That was a joke. I was just teasing Katrina.
There are snacks and fruit and muffins. Please come and help yourselves to breakfast.
Are you excited for today?
Yeah. Do we have the youth?
So what it is.
Yes. But the neat thing about it is that they can get it between 9th and 12th. So anytime you do a project,
Looking forward to figuring out how to get the state seals for all the students, the high school students who will participate in this. Yeah, that's mainly that.
I'm Hillary Ellis.
Hi, Hillary.
And what are you hoping to get out of today?
Just learning, because this is something that's new to me.
Nice.
Good morning. My name is Katrina Floyd Gonzalez.
Where are you from?
And I'm from Fresno Unified, specifically J.E. Young, although we're here in support of our new Farber Educational Center. And what I'm hoping to get out of today are just some new and engaging ways to get our students involved, not only in their learning process, but also while contributing and giving back to their communities.
I'm so excited everybody's here today. We're going to have an exciting time learning about the State Seal of Civic Engagement, how to incorporate that in your classroom, work it right into your daily curriculum, but we're also going to show you how to work it with your district to create a policy for the State Seal of Civic Engagement. And don't forget the after-school people. This needs to be a school-wide effort to make civic engagement through the State Seal a part of everything that happens at your school. Look forward to you guys being here today. And thank you all again for being here, for making this special effort. I want to thank our honored guests for being here. We have one of our board members here with us, Dan Jameson. Dan, you want to say hi? Watch it, he's a lawyer. And he's retired, so it doesn't matter. It matters, okay. And then the county board of supervisors for the Superintendent's Office of Education. Did I say it right? There we go, County Board of Education. Marcy Masamoto is here. Let's give her a hand. Thank you for being here. And then two people that kind of made it possible for us to be here today. They were the first ones that said, I think we'll give you guys $1 so we could do something. It was actually more than $1. The Bonner Foundation, Kay Bonner and Annette Leafler are here today. Thank you all for being here and supporting this. Thank you. I like teasing her, she's so funny. Thank you, yes. And this is gonna, without a doubt, this guy has really been instrumental in making things real for kids on your campus. If you ever have an art project that you want to have kids involved in, that'll help them understand depth and color, perception, perspective, all that wonderful stuff he was telling me last night that I don't still get, Will Porter, stand up over there. Come on, Will. Yeah, there he is there. You might see around somewhere today pictures of a mural at Toronis in their yard. It's 25 feet in diameter. Will spent about a month and a half with kids and their administrator to flesh out this design, and it's a restorative practice, a working mural based on restorative practices. The kids actually use it and walk on it. So Will, thank you for that, for being here. And he's going to have to leave in a little bit, but I wanted to get him up here real quick. So, and then I want to thank Lorenzo Rios over here for letting us come in today with this. He told Lene he's going to send her a bill later. No, just but Lorenzo is an amazing guy. Other than his wonderful accomplishments with the military, twice decorated in the Army and the Marines, how rare. A guy that grew up here in the Central Valley, grew up, parents worked in the fields over there. He knows what it's like to struggle and work your way up and to become a person who finds courage in himself to make solid decisions and progress in his life. And I was really blown away when Lorenzo spoke to a group of middle schoolers at Scout Island about 2 years ago. Every kid in that room was transfixed on him. Now, you know middle schoolers, that's quite an accomplishment, but you had them. Your story was real. You made it happen. And so you're going to hear him in just a second, but I remember something, Lorenzo. Our staff are here from Civic Education Center. Wave your hands around so like you just don't care. Hey. Tammy in the back, Miriam from AmeriCorps. Right over here is Paris, Claude, and Moira. You're going to be hearing, and there's our buddy John. He's my twin, but I got a better tan than he did. They're going to be sharing today. You'll hear them and some exciting things. So I want you to just think about what it is to be in this country today. Think about the flaws that we see. Think about the partisanship that you experience. And now think about the future. What do you want the future of this country to be? What do you want your kids to know? America is far from perfect, but it gave us a set of ideals, values, that allow us to make things better. It's important that we teach our kids these values so that they can make it better, so that they can have democracy continue on. And Lorenzo's going to come up here right now and talk about some of these values that are so important. If our democracy is going to continue, it's in your hands in this room to make sure our students get it. So without a doubt, without a whole lot, let's clap for Lorenzo. Bring him up. Twice decorated.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come here and tackle this very important project. And civic education, I will tell you, is very important, and it's dear to me because when I retired from the military, identity was one of my biggest challenges. Up until that point in time, the identity that I understood was that of military. Prior to that, I was a migrant worker. I was the best apple picker in Washington State. I took pride in it. My dad always told me, mijo, con pilas, dale ganas. He never said, be second place. He made sure we were the best at everything we did. And in the field, I worked hard, and I took pride in the work that I provided. I never saw the school as an opportunity because it was just out of reach. The military created opportunities for me, and the Marine Corps taught me to be able to hear my parents. My parents told me God blessed me with everything I needed. I learned to believe that I was less than. And it came from good intentions. None of that came from bad intentions. Have you ever heard of el pobrecito syndrome? Ay, pobrecito. And here's the deal. That pobrecito syndrome works because all of a sudden they're giving you extra attention and love, and you can lower the standard and you can lure the teacher to believe that this is all I can do. And I loved it. You reduce the cost of admission and you all of a sudden are successful with doing less, or so I thought. I am naturally lazy, so I figured if I didn't have to do the work, and my parents kept saying, mijo, all that's missing son las ganas. Let's do it. And the Marine Corps was the first place where I was able to hear my parents, because the Marine Corps didn't want to hear what I had to say. They said, show me. And what was scary was that I was capable of doing more than what my mind had told me I was capable of. And that was amazing, because then all of a sudden I thought I could go to school, and I did. I went to Gonzaga, a small little Jesuit school up in Spokane, Washington, and I went to the military, and I found myself teaching at great schools like West Point, where I taught international relations and comparative politics. I was a fellow for the Combating Terrorism Center. I was able to do things that I thought I couldn't do. And because of that, I want you to know that since I've retired, I've decided that my identity should just be this simple guy. Not much to look at, but to pay it forward. Instead of hiding the tracks of what afforded me opportunity, I want to make sure that those tracks are very clearly seen by everyone. And one of the things I discovered when I arrived in this valley is that very few folks understand what military service really can offer. They know a very small sliver, and it's scary. And for many, they only know one aspect of it, and that's enlistment. Nothing wrong with that, but there's so much more, so much more. So many of my colleagues are astronauts. So many of my colleagues work at the State Department. So many of my colleagues work in so many remarkable fields. And these are ordinary people doing extraordinary things that by the pedigree, they shouldn't be there. Or so at least I thought. So, what does that mean to you? I'm asking for your help. I'm bringing resources here that most folks don't understand. One of those is the Influencers Conference. I'm gonna play a quick little video so you can see a little bit of what we're bringing here. My biggest challenge is getting you to see what's possible, and the possible doesn't mean you like the military. Many of you will tell me how the military might be flawed, and that's okay for you. But for so many, and this is the part where I think we share in common, we want to create opportunities that don't exist right now. We want to unshackle the social chains that hold so many people back. The difference between me still working in the orchard and me having opportunity that allows me to choose what I do, for me was education. And then the opportunities that came were now an expression of my values put in practice. The more we can encourage civil discourse and civic engagement, the greater opportunity we have to see this union grow and this democratic republic that we have taken for granted to flourish. And where we want to honor military service, we can say thank you for your service by doing our part to defend and protect that which was fought for and defended for us through civic engagement, through civil discourse, by understanding the powers, the levers that we have that so many people don't understand. So I'm going to play this next video, and then I'll leave you so you can get to your business. So if you would, play the ACT.
When you think about a program about learning about the Constitution, you're thinking it's very disengaging. When the ACT program was quite the opposite. We had a lot of engaging activities, a lot of different guest speakers, and overall it was just a great way to educate myself and my peers on the Constitution.
The program was definitely not what I expected. I expected coming in to be a classroom lecture, but people who were there and taught us really made it an enjoyable time and a fun experience.
The first day, we all drove up to Wonder Valley, we zip-lined and caught a chicken, and it was really fun just to get all of our jitters and our nerves out and kind of meet new people. Thursday, we actually went into a student debate. We split up our team, we were each given a prompt, and we had a live debate. And it was super fun because we had an actual judge there, and it was a great opportunity to apply what we learned into the real world. And then the final day was Friday, where we got our certificate of graduation, and we were able to commemorate and have a really good ceremony.
I definitely had a lazier mindset before the program whenever Mr. Rios spoke. And I have to add, the food at this event was very, very good.
That was an honest assessment. The ACT program, it's the American Citizens Toolkit. It doesn't purport to be the panacea with all the answers to all our problems. It purports to have the tools that require a person to apply them to the challenges that we face. Dynamic as they are, these are the tools. And what we found was that some of the students arrived angry, but left empowered. The dynamic was so different. One young lady felt that the Supreme Court had just taken away her rights. By the time she left, she said, I don't have a problem with the Supreme Court. I have a problem with my representative who hasn't put in a bill to take to the president's desk. I don't need the president to provide me another executive order. I need the president to sign a bill into law that protects this right that I think is mine. And I said, that seems impossible. No, Once you know how to get the conversation going, I think we can make this happen. The dynamic was completely different, and all we did was hand them a constitution and go through the process of reading it and having them interpret it. By the way, the document that you saw, the 6 big ideas, if you go into the National Archives and look up the Constitution, you'll see there, we made sure that we didn't get it from any program that's either left wing or right wing. We went to the National Archives. Some people will argue one way or the other, but we thought that that was the most centrist approach to providing something that's unbiased and allow the biases of the individual to interpret, not mine, and instead give them the opportunity to digest and then decide what that translates to. I'm getting the hook over here. Suffice to say, I welcome you to the Memorial District. This district was established in 1946 to welcome our heroes home. We have taken great pride in doing so. The reason we made sure this space was made available to Civic Education Center at no cost, this was our sponsorship to support this, is because these kind of conversations are important, and we believe that the more of these conversations we have, we truly give honor to the names that we see on that wall and to those who have gone before us. I truly believe we stand on the shoulders of giants, and what comes next is dependent on how we decide to apply our God-given rights. And our God-given talent. So please, while you're here, feel at home. This is your district, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
All right, I mean, if that doesn't put in perspective some idea of the seriousness of citizenship, I don't think we will get it. Being a part of a democratic society takes work, and it takes knowledge, not just shouting up and down because you want to see something change. So now, without further delay, I'm going to introduce my illustrious twin, the other graybeard, Dr. John Minkler. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you. And that program that Lorenzo just described is awesome, and it involves looking at young people in a different way. The traditional way of looking at young people in our school system and in our society is that they're empty vessels that need to be filled with information. We need to get them to pass the academic standards tests, and we've got to make sure that we get them the right information in their heads so they're prepared to graduate from high school and go to college. But what we're doing and what Lorenzo's program is talking about, and many of you do in your work, is you're relating to young people as whole people, as young citizens who are capable of thinking critically about what's going on, who are capable of engaging in civil dialogue with each other to try to understand at a deeper level what's going on in their school, in their community, in our country, in the world. And that's a whole different way of looking at young people. And when we do that, they respond. When we take young people to Wonder Valley at our youth service, at our youth summit, you'll hear more about that later, they just blossom and they love the opportunity to talk to each other about what matters to them and what they can do about it, okay? So I just think it's important to appreciate a different way of looking at young people, that they have God-given talents. They have a contribution. Each one has his or her own purpose in life. And part of our goal is to help them find that and find a way to participate in our community, in our schools, in our community, in our country in a meaningful way, so by the time they graduate from high school, they understand what it means to be a citizen. So I'm going to go around the room and ask you to very quickly introduce yourselves, but I want to share something that I found on the way home I went up to see my mother, who's 98, for her birthday in Berkeley, and I drove down early yesterday morning on Highway 5. I stopped at a truck stop, and I passed one of these, they have these stands with all the bumper stickers and all the different kinds of, and most of them are jokes, and most of them are corny, and most of them, I didn't want to have anything to do with. But this is one that I bought. And I'll read it. Some of you in the back might not be able to see. Civility, it's the next big thing. This was at a truck stop, and it got me thinking, is civility the next big thing? We certainly need it in this country. We certainly need our young people to understand what that means. What does it mean to be civil? Okay, so here's your task. I want you to give us your name and your position and your school, and one word that relates to developing civility in our young people. There's a lot of different ways to consider civility. Okay, there's a lot of things we could do. There's a lot of things we hope students understand. And so when I go around the room, I'm going to ask you to just say your name, your position, the school that you're from, and one word that relates to civility. So can we start here?
Hello, good morning. My name is Deshara Strange. I am a manager in Fresno Unified School District for the Office of African American Academic Acceleration, A4 for short. And my word would be self-leadership. Yes.
Marcy Masamoto, Fresno County Board of Education trustee. I would say listen.
Kay Bonner Cummings with the Bonner Family Foundation, the funder here, one of them, and mine would be thoughtful.
Dan Jamison, retired attorney, and my one word would be here.
I thought I escaped. Annette Leifer, the Bonner Family Foundation, and my one word is compassion. I'll pass the baton.
Ken Stocks, Sanger West. I am a teacher and instructional coach, and my one word would be inclusiveness.
Suzanne Peterson, English teacher at Sanger West, and I would go with empathy.
Taj Zhang over at Sanger West High School, also I teach math. My one word would be caring.
Celeste Bowers, English at Sanger West. I would say kindness.
Amy Avery, I'm the Director of Community Partnerships at Fresno Chaffee Zoo, and my word would be perspective.
I'm Amber Carpenter, I'm the Community Partnership Coordinator at the Fresno Chaffee Zoo, and my word would be, you took mine, it was empathy, it's okay. I think my word would be education, competency.
Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Moreno and we're with the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools Office, and I would choose integrity as my word.
Hi, my name is Rita Arkayan. We're with the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and my word is empathy.
Hi, good morning. My name is Linda, also with the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and my word would be equity.
Okay, before we go on, there's a lot of people from Fresno County. What department are you guys in?
We're with the Foster and Homeless Youth Education Services Department.
There we go. Yes.
Our whole table.
Yeah.
There's other Fresno County Superintendent of Schools person as well that are on the other side, yes. My name is Cheryl Vieira. I am with this department here, and my word was respect.
Ashley Garten, same with FCSS here, Foster and Homeless. My word would be accountability.
Amanda Meeker, Fresno County Superintendent of Schools Office, and my word would also be integrity.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carmen Pimentel. I'm also with FCSS Foster and Homeless, and my word would be politeness.
Thank you so much. You're so polite.
My name is Victor Diaz, and I'm with Mendota High School. I'm the after-school coordinator, and my word would be empathy.
Lydia Medina, school counselor at Kalina High. My word would be self-awareness.
Hi, I'm Marshawn O'Neill. I am a school counselor at Kalinga High School as well, and mine would be compassion.
Okay, good morning. My name is Katrina Floyd Gonzalez. I am an English and social science teacher at J.E. Young. Soon to be Farber Educational Center, and my word compassion was taken, so I've changed it to grace.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Gross. I'm a teacher at J.E. Young, and my word would be patience.
Thank you, and thank you for being civil when your word got picked by somebody else. You know, you could have lost your temper, and but you guys, and the depth of the wisdom that you have makes me feel gratitude. That's my word, gratitude. So one thing we have, I do a lesson on the Pledge of Allegiance. And I don't have time to do the whole lesson right now, but I'm just going to describe it to you. What I do is ask the students if they understand what a contract is. Most of them do. I can explain it. But then there's something called a social contract, which is not necessarily written. It's an agreement in terms of what do you get from your school, from your community, from your nation, and what do you give? It's that really that simple. And so we do a brainstorm. We don't have time to do it here, but think of all the things that we get by being citizens of the United States. I mean, we have more freedom. We have an incredible economy. We have the strongest military in the world. There are problems, and it has been pointed out, and we address that. But the fact is that we have an incredible amount of freedom and rights and privileges. We have free education. The list. If there was a crisis, we could call 911 and the police would come. The fire would come if it's a fire. I mean, we have a tremendous amount to be grateful for. Is what we get. Then what do we give? How does the contract work? Well, and if we had time, this is an hour lesson with students, but here's an abbreviated part of it. What we have to give is we have to abide by the law, okay? We have to pay taxes, and that gets into some interesting conversations with students. Taxes are too high, it's not fair. And we have to be willing to do jury duty. And that's about it. Males have to be willing to sign up for the selective service system. Okay, in case of a war. There are lots of other things that are needed that are optional. Voting is needed, but it's optional. Serving your community, doing civic engagement, participating in our democracy are essential, but they're not required. Okay, so that's the social contract. And then I ask students, are you ready to sign it? And I have an image on the board. This is what you get, and we fill that out. And this is what you give, and we fill that out. And then there's a place for the students to sign and date. And I say, are you ready to sign the contract? And they look at me, do we really have to sign? How do you do that? What's going on? And so I ask, is there anybody who doesn't want to sign the contract, who's not ready yet? And sometimes kids will get up and say, the police aren't fair, or taxes are too high, and so we have conversations about it, and I make sure that they understand that our founders created a democratic republic so that if there is something that's not right, and we care enough about it, we can work together to change it. Okay, so there are problems, and that we have ways of addressing those problems. Now, is everybody ready to sign it? Okay, are you ready? Here, now? Okay, stand up. If you're ready to sign the contract, if you're not, sit down, you don't have to. So the way we sign the social contract of the United States is by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. The pledge actually means something. It actually means that you're agreeing to that social contract. Okay? So there's the flag. Say with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is my time up? Oh, I had one more.
It's corny. Being a citizen doesn't relate. I was with a group of 250 all-white women, the Daughters of the American Revolution this weekend, talking about something, you know. My wife and I go in there, and you know the story of Marian Anderson, where she was not allowed to sing at Constitution Hall in 1939. They invited me, a black male, to speak to their group about civic values. The end of that story is that that organization totally rewrote their constitution in 1940. Marian Anderson sang at that place several times after that. We don't have to be perfect, but we have to be willing to live by our values. Somebody said accountability earlier. We have to understand when we don't live according to our values that we are accountable for that. Citizenship, being in this country, I'm not talking about a legal thing on a paper, being in this country, you're held accountable to make it work, as John just explained. Now, without further delay, I got to introduce you to a great person who's become a friend. I don't know, I geeked out with her. You know how you meet somebody you always want to meet before and you go, oh my God, there she is, you know. I did that. She is responsible for this whole thing in civic education and civic engagement in California's public school. She was the Chief Justice of the California State Supreme Court. She had students coming in and parents coming in not knowing what their rights were, not knowing what they could do and not do in the court system. So she went to the Secretary of Public Instruction at the time and said, we need to make some changes, and began teaching civic engagement, civic involvement in our classrooms. She created a report in 2014 called The State of Civic Education in California. What a powerful task force. It led to the State Seal of Civic Engagement. It led to the Civic Learning Award. It led to other things that you're going to hear about today. And is she on? Oh. Okay, so I'm going to talk, we're going to get her up on the screen. I mean, can we hear her though? Hey, Tanya, can you hear? Okay, very cool. So Tanya, we'll get you in a second. We'll get you up on the screen. I'm going to keep bragging about you if I can. No, just we'll get her going in a minute. But I want you to understand that we have these opportunities to talk about what it is to be here in this country without being partisan. Talk about the responsibilities for all the people in our country and not just for a few. And the Daughters of the American Revolution, when they totally changed their constitution and got rid of everything and had these values that America is about equality for all, and they were willing to live it, they had to get rid of some of their officers and some of their leaders. But they did to make the change. And when I finished speaking there, and it's okay that, you know, you're white, it's okay I'm black, it's okay you're brown, you know, but sometimes you stand out in a room of all white people, right? They stood up and gave a standing ovation, you know, because we talked about responsibilities and civic values. So Tanya, I think we're about ready.
I just don't know how to get my volume connected. It should be, but it's my speakers.
Okay, maybe we can put the microphone over there. So let's welcome former Supreme Court Justice Tani Cantil-Sakaway. All right.
I am honored to be here with the teachers who I've heard a partial introduction and their words today. I want to first say to you, Stephen, that I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak, and I'm also so grateful to you that you co-founded the Civic Education Center, Inc., and I'm grateful to all the staff who are there, and I just love the innovation to get me up on screen and to let me be heard, and just the ideas that come from problem solving with me being able to reach you. To the teachers, I wish to say to all of you, thank you so much for the work you do, for the hard times that you have survived, for the challenges that existed long before the COVID pandemic and the challenges to teaching. I want to tell you that I am an unlikely former Chief Justice of California. My parents were farm workers. My mother and father, of course, immigrant families. The highest education my mother had was high school after she was an itinerant farm worker and finally graduated from a high school where she was picking crops. My father had only a second grade education, yet they knew as immigrants that the way to have stability and success and contentment and family would be through education. So these people who had nothing, who I joked when we were young, bought the Encyclopedia Britannica, but we were so poor we could only afford A through G. And so anything that happened outside that alphabet, we just didn't know. You know, TV in those days had 3 channels and there was no internet. But they firmly believed in the power of education. And through public education, and primarily for me, my high school years. In high school, I found student government. And in student government, I found agency. I found the ability to lead, to collaborate, to join, to be collegial, to laugh, to create. And it was only through people like you who made that possible. Of all of the people I've had teach me through K through 12, community college, law school, and every lecturer I have heard in my legal profession, I remember only my government teacher from high school who felt and gave me agency that I had something to do. And I compliment all of you for doing that. And I know maybe this is a phrase that's used often, and that is that you are unsung heroes for the work you do. And that I and many appreciate it, which is really what led to the power of democracy and the judiciary. So I come from public schools, public university, and I was one of the first to go to college, and really my sister and I were the
hang on a sec, Tanya.
Sorry, Tanya, could you just pause for a second? We're having technical difficulties again. Okay, try again.
Thank you, Morgan. I worked as a prosecutor, one of the few females and people of color ever in a courtroom. I tried cases, worked for George Dufmajan, and became one of the youngest judges in the history of California, and thereafter stayed 32 years in the judiciary wearing a black robe. I went through Superior Court, which is the trial court, the appellate court for 6 years, and I led the judiciary, the third branch of government, for the last 2011 to the end of 2022 when I retired. And at that point, prior to that, I learned well through the professional legal system that very few people understood their rights, and that law was meaningless for people who didn't understand the rights nor could understand the language in which their rights were provided. And so early on in 2011, I joined with teachers from the Los Angeles Unified School District, from unions, from business, from the Cal Chamber, and we created a summit in 2012 and brought then United States Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who was pioneering iCivics. We brought it to California. And from that is what Stephen indicated. We ended up at the summit writing the book about the state of civic education in California. And it was so bad, in my view, in 2011. I would go into the legislature to talk about funding for the third branch of government, the judiciary, during the Great Recession. And members of the legislature would say to me, well, what agency are you? What branch are you? How many chiefs are there? Who do you work for? Who is your boss? What are judges? Don't judges work for you, or don't judges work for us? And I thought to myself, these are our decision makers and their staff in the legislature who don't appreciate tripartite democracy and the need and the understanding that 3 branches of government are co-equal, and that the judiciary is a branch of government, not an agency. And no, the judges are all elected officials subject to the Constitution. And they don't work for me any more than I work for you. And I'm elected statewide. And so there was a lot of civic education that had to happen, and we did that by joining forces with legislators in order to create programs. And that's how the power of democracy was born. And through that, we enlisted judges and lawyers and you across the state and your districts to engage in civic programs, whether it be projects or competitions or visits. And during COVID, we beamed ourselves, judges, into your classrooms, and we were the first time ever able to deliver civic lessons fluently in Spanish, civic lessons fluently in Mandarin and Cantonese, delivered by judges who love to talk about the judiciary and the three branches of government. And so from this, tremendous, incredibly innovative people like Stephen Morris brought together this civics education program. And what we know most of all is that we want to help you. We want to provide you with things you want and need in order to teach civics. We don't want to add to your burden. We want to help support it. We don't want to get in your way. We want to know what you need. We want to provide that. We know, appreciate, as parents, as people, as students, how hard you work. I think that you should be one of the highest paid professionals in California because your role is so significant. You mold our youth.
Amen.
Create our leaders. And so I say to you, when I retired from being the Chief Justice of California, I went to the Public Policy Institute of California, PPIC. It's a think tank. It's nonpartisan. We present and do research on reports. We provide data to the legislature to inform and improve policy. We have a higher education center. We study K through 12. We look and advocate for the facts, for funding, for support, for digital access, for transfer programs, for dual enrollment programs, for language access, because we know that these are the tools that we think could help you, help students achieve an education that will hopefully, like my parents and your parents and where we all are today, build a better future for people who live in California, citizen or resident. We hope to build that better future together, and that's what we're doing. And so the fact that you're spending time here with Dr. Stephen Morris and CEC makes a huge difference, and in any way that we can be of assistance, we would be. Under my leadership, for the last 8 months at PPIC, we are going to launch a civics program. We hope to partner with Dr. Stephen Morris's program. We want to provide a way to make sure we get what you need without getting in your way. We want to know what that is. And so, really thankful for the work you do. Really hope to aid and add and assist, and that you should know you're supported. And so while we at PPIC are still in the beginning effort of where we can be of help and not where we might repeat, we really want to hear from you and assist you and invite you to be our guests so that you can take away the information you need. And so, I don't know if this is sitting next to you, Stephen, is that Marcy?
Yes, it is.
Marcy? Well, you should know Marcy. We just saw each other over the weekend at the book lecture by Moss, her husband, and I'm so grateful that you are there to spread the good word and all the good work they do in Fresno, also the Masamoto family and all the good work they do, and also the fact that your husband is on the PPIC board and we admire him and he's a true leader. So I'm going to end with that. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Please let us know what you need. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for all that you do. Signing off, Tawny.
Thank you.
So thank you, and I hope you caught this. The PPIC is planning a youth research committee to meet with them in Sacramento to talk about issues in the state, which matches what John and I will be doing February 12th and 13th. We're going to be asking you to select some of your leaders to come with us to Sacramento to start forming a statewide youth council to address issues in our state. And you're going to hear this later. We focus on knowledge, informed, authentic youth voice. Your students that go up there will be practiced in research, be able to look at bias, and then be able to talk to others who think differently than them to build consensus. So keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so once again, thank Tani. Wow. Here you go. Let's give her a hand.
One of the things that we do that's very different from some other civic education organizations is we like to focus on American civic values. And a lot of organizations shy away from that because it's controversial. And a lot of teachers are reluctant to talk about civic values in their classroom because it gets controversial. But we feel like that's one of the reasons why our social contract is falling apart, is because we don't have a common ground of civic values, and the young people that are coming through our school system are not learning a common set of values that we all agree upon. And so we see this incredible polarization where people can't even talk to each other if they're in this camp or that camp, tribes. It's, you know, it's getting so, the polarization is getting so bad that we can't solve problems anymore. And we're getting paralyzed. And young people see that, and they're afraid. They see all these problems, and they don't see the problems getting solved, and they see the adults acting like irresponsible people because they're worrying, almost at war with each other. So we think one of the solutions to that is to get back to the fundamental values that our country was based on, and use that as the common ground for civil dialogue, for democratic participation. Okay, and if young people could agree on that, well, the educators have to agree on it, and then we need to engage young people to understand it, then that creates an opportunity for common ground where we can have civil dialogue and we can engage in real problem solving and democratic participation. Okay, so there's a question, what do we mean by American civic values? There's a lot of different lists, there's a lot of different ideas about it. My background, I started working on this issue in the 80s and 90s, and I got really involved with the National Council of the Social Studies, and I published a curriculum early 90s, and I found out at the national level, at the Professional Social Studies organization, NCSS, there's a split between the more conservative faction that had certain values that they wanted to emphasize, and a more liberal faction that had certain values they wanted to emphasize, and they couldn't agree until, let's see, it's not right there. About 2003, they came out with a report called the Civic Mission of Schools. And they came to an agreement, and they said, we've got to be able to present a common set of American civic values to young people, or this country is going to fall apart. That was 2003. And they were able to acknowledge the best way to identify civic values that everybody could agree to is to go back to the original values of the founders. And so that's what we do, and we found it to be extremely effective, and we have support from conservatives, liberals, as long as you don't get caught up in this particular faction or that faction. Okay, so let me get to it. This is our mission: to restore civility in America by creating opportunities for youth to learn and practice civic values and democratic skills. And so this is our history, and it goes back to 2000 when Steve and I started working together. Actually, before that, I was working at the County Office of Education doing civic engagement activities. Then the task force report came out. There's a picture on the upper left of the task force report. Then Chief Justice Tani Kantil-Sakaui initiated the statewide program. We were incorporated in 2017. 2022, we brought students to the first California Civic Learning Summit in Sacramento. And that was part of a statewide leadership group on civic education that Steve and I are part of. And then 2023, we partnered with the superintendent of schools, Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, on a grant to invite districts around Fresno County, which is why some of you are here, because that grant allows us to provide services for you and paid for by the grant. So this is a really brief history of who we are. So our goals: provide every student in every school district in the Central Valley with opportunities to develop and practice democratic knowledge and skill. Provide civic service learning opportunities to communities and cities in the Central Valley, and to share and educate all on the value of civic education and civility. So I'm glad civility is the next big thing. I was really pleased to see that. Okay, so we have served back in 16, 17, fairly small number. You can see we dipped down during the pandemic, but we haven't even counted last year's hours of volunteer service on civic engagement projects, but at this point it was 27,000 hours, and the total number of students was 800, something like that, up until this point. This year we're hoping to double that. So what are the original American civic values? So we go to the Declaration, we go to the primary documents, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm a history guy. Steve can give me the nudge if I go too long. I'm just going to make this really fast, but I think it's important to acknowledge there are three primary sources that the founders gave us. The first one was the Declaration of Independence. So things like all men are created equal, we're endowed by our Creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The consent of the governed is a reference to democracy, that the people, we the people, are going to decide what kind of a government we want. So that's one original source, primary source. Then there's the Constitution, we the people, to form a more perfect union. And we've talked about that. It's not perfect. The founders knew it wasn't perfect. But they tried to create a structure, a constitution that allowed for the people to make the changes that were needed to keep this experiment in democracy going. So there's three primary documents. One is the Declaration, one is the Constitution. The third one is the Great Seal of the United States. Raise your hand if you know what the Great Seal of the United States is. You'll all recognize it when you see it. Okay, so the same day that the founders signed the Declaration of Independence, which was, what day was that? July 4th, 1776. The same day, they had this vision of a new kind of government. They not only wanted to separate from England, they had a vision of a new kind of government where it wasn't a tyranny or a monarchy, that it would be based on a democracy, and the people would have inalienable rights, and there would be an opportunity to improve the government, and the people would be the source of power in this new country. So they assigned a group of 3 men to create, here we go, the 3 men to create a symbol for this vision they had of a new kind of government. So Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Ben Franklin. And they spent a lot of time trying to figure out what would the symbol be for this new kind of government. Okay, so the symbol they came up with is the Great Seal of the United States. It's on the dollar bill. It actually wasn't available to the public except for this side, the eagle side, was used as a presidential, and still is used as a presidential symbol. But the pyramid side was not available to the public until 1935 under President Roosevelt. There's a whole story about that. But what's important is what are the values that are involved in this, in the front and back of the Great Seal. And this is a whole hour lesson. I'm gonna bring it down to 2 minutes. One of the things is that it's an unfinished pyramid, and each layer represents a generation. The layer on the bottom is Roman numerals for 1776. So that represents the generation that fought the Revolutionary War, created the Declaration, created the Constitution, and got this country started. Okay, but they knew that it wasn't perfect, so it's an unfinished pyramid. And they knew that each generation had to make contributions and changes and improvements for this country to last. Okay, so that's the reason why it's an unfinished pyramid. And so what I tell students is, the reason we're asking you to do a civic engagement project is because that's your generation on the top right now. Now it's your turn to identify what are the problems in this country and what are you going to do about it. Okay? So each generation has had to do that. And I tell them about, the Civil War. We had to deal with the mistake of slavery, the tragedy of slavery. So that was down in the middle somewhere. And that generation had to struggle for that. There was World War I and World War II. There were lots of generations that had to make changes. Women's right to vote, civil rights movement. Now we've got all kinds of other problems. But each generation has a responsibility to make a contribution to this. And students need to understand they're part of this whole process. And they're going to have to deal with some pretty intense, complex issues. So they're going to need to be prepared. They're going to need to have common civic values, and they're going to need to have skills to be able to solve problems and to be able to work together in a democratic process, okay? The eye at the top is the eye of God. According to the founders, they said God is guiding us. That was their belief. They also gave us the First Amendment with religious freedom. They also knew that it would be wrong for the government to tell people that they had to be a particular religion and that everyone was free to have their own religious beliefs or be atheist. Okay, so they wanted to say they believed in a creator, but the people have the right to their own beliefs. Okay, the eagle side, there's a lot to it. The students like to hear that the arrows represent war. We'll fight to defend ourselves. If we're attacked, we will fight. But our goal is the olive branch, and I ask them, which side is the eagle facing? What's the aim of our country? The aim is peace. We'll fight if we have to, but the aim is peace. The main thing on this side is the national motto in the banner in the eagle's beak. E pluribus unum is Latin for from many into one. So the founders were saying, if this country is going to be successful, the citizens have to understand how to bring diverse colonies together, diverse people together, to work together as one. That's the key, according to the founders. I think it's important for students to know that. I think it's important for us to talk to students about that. Can we as a class, can we as a group of teachers work together as one? How does that work? So we can talk about teams. If they're in sports, they know how to work. That's an essential component of sports. But there are a lot of cases where we need to learn to work together. Okay, the example I give, do I have a minute for this? Okay. One of the ways I found to talk to students about it is the best way to understand E pluribus unum is each one of you. Each one of you has 30 trillion cells in your body, each one of us. And think of the diversity of cells that we have. We have blood cells, we have bone cells, we have skin cells, we have neurons, incredible diversity of cells. Each one is a living unit with a nucleus that dies and reproduces and dies, and new ones are born. They all have to work together as one. or we wouldn't be alive. You know, if you think about it, it's amazing how our bodies know what to do. All the cells in our body know what to do. That's an example of E pluribus unum. Now, how well are we doing that as a nation right now? Are we working well together? Are we living up to that motto, E pluribus unum? I won't make you answer that. But I think it's something that young people need to hear about, and it's something we emphasize whenever we do classes and activities like the Youth Summit. Okay, so there are, oops, we lost our place there a little bit, but these are the civic values that come directly from those 3 primary documents. And we have this in the curriculum. So then we say that if you're, just like Lorenzo was saying earlier, if you want to thank a veteran, if you want to be a responsible citizen, you need to make some kind of contribution. You need to be about service. And so we encourage students to get involved in all kinds of service projects. This is our civic engagement cycle, and we'll talk more about that later. These are some examples of the kinds of projects that students decide to do.
I get access to this curriculum, and after I go over the California Democracy Schools program, I am going to lead you through a sample lesson of what goes in here. But basically, it's that process that we talked about, and for each section of the process, the civic values, the project, choosing an issue, research, project, etc., they offer lessons. Lessons, teacher instruction, PowerPoints, things that are already made for your students to be able to fill in. There's paper copies and electronic copies that are offered and available. That's one of the main things that you get with the program. You also get in-person coaching. So I can come into your classroom as a teacher who's been there and who has been in the trenches and who has worked. I mean, I think I had 185 students at Clovis North, 5 sections of 40 seniors. So I understand where y'all are coming from and the challenges faced by individual teachers in the classroom trying to do this kind of project by yourselves. And I hope that we've made something that can support that. And we can support you. Steve, John, and I will come into the classroom, help facilitate lessons, help facilitate those other things. We're also planning to do a weekly Zoom PLC where you can hop on and ask me questions as things come up, right? Problems happen. Things don't work the way you think they're going to work. And you can talk to people, you can talk to me, and you can talk to each other about how to problem solve and how to deal with that in the classroom. And then also, just like the State SEAL program with the grant, we offer to help facilitating and getting guest speakers, nonprofits. In the curriculum, there's actually a huge list of Central Valley nonprofits that you can contact that I've made easy and accessible for your students to take a look at. So if you want to learn more about this, you can use the QR code on the flyer. It'll take you to our website. And there's also a teacher forum attached on our website. There are 2 forums, one for the State SEAL program and one for the Democracy Schools program, where you can just hop on the board and ask a question, and we'll answer it, or other teachers, if they have experience, will answer it. The State SEAL program one is free, so you can just hop into that. The Democracy School program one will happen when you sign up for that program. So, without further ado, I'm going to take you through a sample lesson. I'm going to talk to you about some of the projects that my kids did over the years and how you can come up with a civic project. What steps are involved, what things do you need to think about, what things do you have to have kids think about. So Tirones was a huge example of a kind of, they had a problem, right? The bullying. They came in, they talked to experts in the field, which I highly recommend. You know, before you get into finding your project, you want to gather as much information as you can. And in the lessons, I actually do go over having the kids look at nonprofits in the area who work on their subject. I also teach them and point out policy. Can you find your school's policy? Is there a policy on that, right? You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to see what other people are already doing and how you can support them. Kids come in with these big topics. Racism. I'm sorry, honey, you're not going to solve racism, but you might make one small piece better for your community, for the people in your community, for the teenagers in your community. And a lot of the projects they end up coming up with, a lot of them affect school. And so if they know what their school's policy is, if they have a policy, what a policy even is, then it can help them understand what is already standing in the way or what can help move us forward. And sometimes you find policies that aren't being enforced, right? We had a group of students who really wanted to get a student representative on the Clovis Unified School Board. And we did all this research and we couldn't find anything about it, so we're like, okay, gung-ho. And then we go and talk to a school board member and they're like, we already have that. And we're like, okay, what do they do? And then we found out that they basically just report out on what's happening in the schools. They don't have a voice, they don't have a say, they don't get to raise student concerns. So then the project became, okay, how are you picking these people? And we're like, oh, the leadership teachers just pick some random kid that they like. And it's like, can we make an election process? Can we, put out a list of things that they're allowed to bring up or a date where they're allowed to bring up problems? Maybe they meet with different people at different schools to find out the problems. Maybe you have a representative from each school that kind of meets with a little mini council and then they send a rep up. It's a pretty big subject. And when they were doing their research and talking to people, they found out that the most common age for girls to be sex trafficked is 13. That's junior high, right? So they're like, okay, we need to let the junior high kids know about this. And they're like, we're gonna make infographics about the dangers of human trafficking. We're gonna put them up in English classes. And then they went and talked to the schools and schools were like, whoa, no. That is too advanced, too sexual a topic for junior high kids. So they're like, okay, well, how can we tweak it? So then they figured out that human traffickers tend to target girls through relationships. They're called Romeos, where they woo them and think that they're their boyfriend, and then before you know it, they're, trafficking them. So instead of sex trafficking posters, they made relationship warning sign posters to make it more age appropriate, but to still give the kids the information they needed to try and get away from that situation. They made the posters once. It had a hotline number for human trafficking. We were able to sneak that in at the bottom. And they chose some pilot schools, a pilot school in Clovis and a pilot school in Fresno, and they were able to get those actually put up in the classroom. So that's like a smaller project where they made the posters. I had another group that did human trafficking, and they realized that parents didn't know anything about it. So they made presentations in English, Spanish, and Hmong, and they worked with Fresno Unified's parent university to go and make presentations to parents about human trafficking, so that they could know the dangers, they could see what to look out for with their kids. So there's all different ranges of projects and things that people can do. Steve, did you want to add any?
Yeah, just briefly, there was a group of kids at Fresno, Bullard and Edison that did their student walkout. And they were protesting some of the racial statements and signs that were going around the district. And so the district agreed to meet with those students and took them to Wonder Valley to talk about it. And it went nowhere. It was like loggerheads. The district was frustrated, the kids were frustrated, until we took them to Scout Island, those same students that were involved in that protest, and began to talk to them about how do you create common ground in order to get people to agree with you on something they don't like, right? So you find the common ground. We talked about working through this idea of Langston Hughes' poem, Let America Be America. And in there he says over and over again about the ideals of America, but this isn't America to me. And then his last stanza he goes and says, but America has to be. The ideals, the values of America have to exist. And we talked to them about how would you approach your protest now? What would you do different about it? And they began saying, instead of creating opposition because we're forcing an issue, how do we build people who come along with us? The greatest success to the civil rights movement is that it wasn't just a single race that was involved in it. The whole country got involved because it created partnerships. When you create these projects, especially the controversial ones, your students are going to need partners who are different and think different than them in order to make their project a success. And success doesn't mean you get what you want. Success means that you got into it, you learned about it, you attempted to do something that was really good. So that's one of the type of things, and it's not bad for you. Fowler does this really well. They said, we would like our kids' projects to focus on veterans' needs. If your school has a particular topic that they want their students to focus on. It's not robbing students of their voice. It's not removing this idea of informed, authentic voice. The district, they're learning how to work within the parameters of their district, just like we work in the parameters of a democracy, and we present ideas. So if your district wants to do that, that's fine. If it doesn't, like you heard Moira say earlier with sex trafficking, check with your principals. Check with them and say, hey, is this too much? Then what can we do? And then come up with the idea with the students. Let's talk about relationships. And you still cover the same thing.
So I just wanted to, before I get into the lesson, I wanted to show you an example project that some of my students did in the past. This is from 2 years ago, I think. And they felt that the problem of sexual harassment on campus was a big deal. At CART, at their home schools, that boys and girls were being overly sexual with each other. They're making comments, not realizing that people could be offended. Sometimes people were being touched inappropriately. And they're like, people need to understand exactly what sexual harassment is. And they did a deep dive and they looked at the California State Health Curriculum to see what was taught in sex ed, and noticed that the sexual harassment was kind of light. It was like it's mentioned, but it's not like really in depth. And they actually did, let me see if this will work. No, of course not. So they created a logo, and they talked about the school districts represented. Oh, perfect, thank you. Talked about the school districts represented. And then they shared personal stories. I talk to my kids, and I talk about persuasion. And that as a former English teacher, ethos, pathos, logos, and pathos, emotion, the emotion of a real person's story can be extremely convincing. Obviously, you don't want kids to be uncomfortable, so I always tell them, you're only sharing if you want to, and if you want to share it as a friend, this happened to a friend of mine, to make it a little bit more removed, then you can kind of do that. Oh, and they did pelvis too, sorry. So they did facts and statistics. They said that 40% of boys that they surveyed and 87% of girls have been victims of sexual harassment on campus. And when you have statistics like that, when you do surveys, when the kids send out surveys, and it's so easy these days with like Google Forms and other things like that, it gives the backup, the data that educators and administrators, other people really respect. They don't think these kids are going to come in. They think they're going to come in and be like, we want to stop sexual harassment. We have no idea how to do it. And it's like, no, we have done our research. So they did a sexual harassment survey. They put up QR codes all over their campuses to see if the kids could get it. I know Bullard is banning cell phones on campus during class, so it makes it a little harder, but you can send these out through email as well. And then they said only 50% of kids could identify what harassment actually was. So they did that in the survey as well. Sorry, move on. I don't know what that statistic means. Oh, and they got to design a billboard. That was something we did at CART. So then they talked about the current policies, the current sexual harassment policies, to show both Clovis and Fresno Unified that they had done their research. They knew what they were talking about. They knew that they had these sexual harassment policies, but the board policies mostly apply to employees, right? Not necessarily to students. And this 2-paragraph thing is all that is mentioned in the current health curriculum, I believe, in Clovis Unified on sexual harassment. So what they proposed was that they would have a sexual harassment lesson added into the current sex ed curriculum, which in Clovis Unified is in 8th grade biology, I think, or 9th grade biology. And in Clovis, it's in 9th grade health class. And they actually had, they have a pre-assessment, you should find out what people know. Then they have a lesson on what is sexual harassment, a video that was approved by the district, and then a discussion at the end where kids can discuss, okay, what does that look like, how can we combat it, etc. Then they talk about legal consequences, because it was a law class. And why people tend to stay silent when it happens to them. What are the barriers? And then it happens to guys too. And guys tend to stay silent way more than the girls. And then the method that you can use to report at school, and a post-assessment so they can see what they learned. This was all made by 11th and 12th grade girls, an entirely girl-less group. It's going to cost to make these copies, to get them to the teachers, etc. right? So they have the videos actually made by a educational organization, so they're not just pulling stuff that they made up or other things like that. And they said the subscription for 1 year is $99. For 40 handouts, the cost of copies would be about 30 bucks. And then for a teacher lesson plan printed out, it would only be $1.20. And for that, sorry, can you move on? The benefits is that they've shown that the lesson plan that they found, and they found it online, so they were able to say, you know, here are the statistics, schools that have used this lesson plan have seen a 50% reduction in sexual harassment on campus. So you can see the work that they put into this. You can see, and this is, by the way, a template that they were able to use to create this PowerPoint, and I highly, highly recommend using templates on our online version of the curriculum. We actually have some templates already on there for your access and for your use. It's just easier for kids to make something that looks professional. And then they had the next steps. How are we going to do this? And they proposed it to the CART board first, and then they went to the boards for their different school districts. Sorry. Now, did this get passed? No. It's a great idea. They did a wonderful job. Sometimes these projects fall flat, and that's okay. And I actually have 2 members of this group who went on to be seniors and are still trying to get it done past outside of the class, outside of the grade, which I think speaks to how powerful these kinds of projects, civic engagement projects, can be, because they realize people will listen to them. You know, so many people think teenagers are full of hormones and they're crazy and they have all these beliefs, but they don't know what they're talking about. And they found out that through this process, they could get people to listen to them, to take them seriously, that they could become knowledgeable on a subject, and that they could really affect change in their communities to try and make things better for other people who come up behind them. They're building that next level of the pyramid, right? Okay, so we are going to go through kind of the steps of creating a project.
And whether or not you're in a classroom, if you're in the after-school program, or you have an independent club, these steps can apply to you, that she's going to show you now. It's not just limited in what we do in class with teachers.
Yes, thank you, Steve, I missed that. Sorry, technical difficulties. Okay, here we go. Brainstorming a plan. So, the thing the kids are always like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm like, great, how much is that going to cost? Who's going to do it? Where is it going to happen? Right? You got to think about all of those different things. So, for plan development, obviously, first thing you do is identify a problem, right? So the kids identified the sexual harassment, they identified the human trafficking, which is a huge issue in our Central Valley. I've had kids do projects on LGBTQ plus inclusiveness on campus. I've had kids do projects on trying to help homelessness, and every group comes up with a different topic and a different approach to solving a problem. So, yeah.
This is where dialogue comes in. When your students are working on these projects, they're not all going to agree.
Yes.
And so that's when they have to have these skills to talk to each other that we work with.
Yeah, I actually made, it's not in the binder, but it's on the online app, I always have kids do group norms. So when you form your group, you know, I used to talk about, because at CART I was a team teacher, so the 3 teachers would talk about how we have norms, about how we work together, what we're going to come with to the classroom. We give them example norms that they can look at, and then they have a group document where they keep track of the norms, and if there's conflict, we go back to the norms, right? What did you agree on? What did you say you would do? We all said we'd be prepared. There's also a task management list where they can put in like who's responsible for what and what due date is attached to it. That's always really helpful for keeping track. Is there going to be drama? Yes. Just telling you right now. Especially with some groups and personalities, especially when kids are really close to a topic. I had a group that chose to do mental health, and the majority of the group wanted to focus on anxiety and depression, and one member of the group wanted to focus on schizophrenia. And after taking that member aside and talking with her, well, first of all, they got in the conversation and she told them that anxiety and depression were not real mental health disorders, like schizophrenia was. And I'm like, hold on, come back. And we learned that she had a family member with schizophrenia, and it was really close for her, and it was really hard for her to acknowledge, and she joined that group because she really wanted to advocate for that thing. And I'm like, that's great, but you're in a group. And can we kind of help with this level that they're deciding on with anxiety and depression, and then also maybe talk about early identification, what to do if you feel like you have a mental health disorder, some of those other things to try and kind of bring in her topic as well. Yeah.
This is our first time teaming together, so don't we look cute? No. So one thing I want to add, at Sanger High, we had a group in class that was discussing racism and police violence. And if you know the demographics of Sanger, you know this can be a really tough issue. But it was really cool to see how the kids engaged in conversation with each other, and they broke it down to kids that they knew that had attempted suicide and family members that had been harassed or stopped by the police. And as they talked back and forth about those issues, they begin to change sides. You see the classroom shifting. And this is Latino students, white students, African American students, and Asian students soon shifted over to the side on suicide and mental health. The bell rang. And I saw these kids over here, where a majority of the class was, that was their project, walked over to the two kids that were left, and they said, your topic is important too. Can we talk about that next time? You don't always win in a democracy, but how do you create this sense of camaraderie and fellowship, even though you disagree? They did. That was a big step that they took.
And I would say there's something that I wanted to bring up, and as teachers, the climate is political. You can't avoid that. Ethnic studies is controversial, right? That I have never had a parent complain about this project. Not once, because I give the kids choice. So I usually have them put their first, second, third choice. We brainstorm topics as a class, and we do groups. And almost always, you're going to end up with kids who are kind of with like-minded kids, right? Or who come up with a solution that's kind of different. I had 2 homelessness groups one year, one in my AM class and one in my PM class, because CART's split like that. And the AM class chose to focus on helping homeless people find jobs and job security, which you might say is a little bit more on the right? And then the afternoon class, they wanted to get people resources. They wanted to get homeless women tampons and pads and other things like that. And it's a little bit more of the idea of like a handout, right? Which is maybe a little bit more left. But because the kids are driving the projects, because they're the one driving the ideas, I have never had a parent complain about this project, ever. Which I cannot say about the other things that I've taught. So, next, identify stakeholders. This is something kids overlook a lot. You cannot solve help homeless people without talking to homeless people, right? I have had so many groups who are just like, oh yeah, and there's like, well, did you talk to anybody about what they need? No, you gotta identify who has a stake in this. And it's also not just the people who are suffering from the issue, maybe it's the people who are already out there helping, right? Are you gonna step on any toes for any nonprofit organizations that are already doing something? You gotta figure out who is involved, who are the stakeholders. Now it's time to brainstorm a solution, right? What can we feasibly do about it? Now I say feasibly because my very first year doing this project, I had a group that wanted to work on juvenile justice. And the project that they came up with was originally that they wanted to try and change a state law. And I'm like, oh babies. So, can I flip this over? Something that we talk about with the kids is called a circle of influence. Thank you. And I usually do this with the kids, and it's like a stick figure. And I got this, just to say, I stole this from a local attorney, Mike Wilhelm, who also helped out with this project for years. And what he does is he asks the kids, what are you worried about? And he puts the big things like war, climate change, etc. out here. And then he puts the other things that are closer into them, like bullying, right? And he says, this is your circle of influence right now. If you spend all your time reaching outside of it, you are not going to accomplish anything. But if you focus on the things that you can affect now, slowly that circle gets bigger. And you can do more. So they changed tactics. and decided to do something a little bit easier. Although it was still kind of funny because one of the things they decided to do was they wanted to give these like mandates to the juvenile judges, and we had guest judges for our presentation that year, and one of them happened to be a juvenile court judge. He was like, okay. So, you gotta come up with a brainstorm a solution, what you think is gonna work. And you may have to do this process a couple of times because you might come up with some ideas that then hit a roadblock. It's already being done, or we can't do it because of this, but you gotta start brainstorming to figure that out in the first place. Once you have that idea, you need to identify adversaries and allies. One of my LGBTQ plus groups wanted to, so in Clovis Unified, and I don't know if this is still the way it is because it might have changed since I did this thing. At Clovis West, girls had to wear one color robe at graduation and boys had to wear another color robe at graduation. And they were like, well, what if you're neither? You're identifying as non-binary, or what if I hate that color, or just other things like that. So they chose to propose to the school what it was, but they knew there were going to be some administrators who aren't going to like the change. They knew there were going to be some parent groups that weren't going to like the change, but they also knew there were going to be some parent groups and some administrators who would support them. So how do we identify those people? How do we reach out and say, hey, this is our idea, can you help us? This is similar, like if you're going to approach the board, maybe approach one board member first and get their feedback on it and get their ideas on it on how to approach that. And that really helps you kind of identify that and also think about persuasion. Yeah.
As you develop, your idea, you also want to, when you look for those allies, CEC has about 105, 150 lawyers that are willing to come to classes. And there are other lawyers and other agencies and nonprofits in your community that would love to come and talk to your kids about your specific project. We had at Sanger from the family court come and share with the students about what really happens in family court and domestic violence. Those agencies want to come out and be involved with your kids in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and nonprofits. When you're identifying allies, one of the groups I had with mental health, they wanted to get NAMI's. NAMI is the National Association, Alliance of Mental Health and Illness, and they have a presentation called Ending the Silence. And it's an assembly kind of thing that they do with kids, and they walk them through talking about mental health and the stigma of talking about mental health, etc. So they decided for their project they wanted to get NAMI's presentation into their schools. So then obviously you got to talk to NAMI. And they were excited, and they were like, yes, we will support you, what do you need? And so that helps as well. Okay, so that's identify the right organization to help, right? Who are you going to propose your project to? Are you going to propose it to your school district? Are you going to propose it to one school in particular? I often talk to kids about how they wanted to have it like district-wide, and I'm like, cool, why don't you talk to one school and see if they'll pilot it for you, right? Or I had one group who worked with the Boys and Girls Club, and they wanted to do a local parent community on child abuse stuff on meeting. So they actually set up with the Boys and Girls Club next to Tehipity Middle School in Fresno, and they advertised at all the schools. They used, I think, Fresno Parent University to advertise so that parents could come and learn about what's happening with child abuse. So then they talked, to Boys and Girls Club, can we use your space? Is this okay? And they're like, yes, that's amazing. Let's help you.
May I add to that? We have resources in this room, like I don't know if most of you are aware of this or not, but the zoo has a huge environmental program, and they deal with environmental equity. What's right for a community. Right now they're working with a couple of schools to deal with the lack of trees in West Fresno as an environmental equity issue. So the zoo's available resources, they're here right now. You want to grab them before they leave, and you get resources from them to help you out.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this, this is not one of our projects, but it was a student project. If you drove around Clovis or Fresno recently, near the aqueducts, they'd have these signs that show an oil can being poured out, and it's like if you pour it here, it ends up here, right? And they got help from a local environmental agency as well to help put those up. Okay, logistics. Who, what, when, where, why, or how, right? 5 W's. I don't know if any of you guys were like, what was the name of that newscaster on Nickelodeon, and she'd come on and do the who, what, when, where, why, how. Huh? Lori Beth Denberg. Maybe. And so that's what I talked about the kids. Okay, I was like, so you want to do this program. So for the example, the group that wanted to do the presentation on child abuse, I'm like, great. Where are you going to do it? They're like, I'm like, okay, what makes sense? Who's the population that you want to reach, right? Can you contact organizations? Maybe one of them will give you a space for free to present, because it's a good idea. You know, who's going to do the presentation? Is this going to be a one-time thing? Do you want it to live on past you? In law, we always talk about policies, and if you create a policy, it lives on beyond you. It's more than just a one-off event, right? So with the posters in the classrooms on human trafficking, are you going to give somebody access to that? And I think they ended up trying to reach out to the leadership teams on campus, because they regularly make print posters and put them around campus. So like, can you guys continue to put these up in the following years, right? What are you going to do exactly? What is the exact detail? Because you can't just come in and say, we want to make posters about, you know, human trafficking. You need to have a mock-up of a poster. You need to make all of those things. I've had students who wanted to interview gang members and then create a video that could be shown in schools as kind of like a deterrent kind of thing. Okay, where are you going to get the gang members, right? Who's going to get the video equipment? What exactly is going to be in the video? When do you want it shown? Where do you want it shown? Etc. You got to think about those logistical aspects. And so they decided that they wanted it shown. This was a group that had some students at Buchanan. They wanted to pilot at Buchanan because Buchanan had video announcements every Friday. They're like, okay, we'll make a short clip thing that they could put in the video announcements on Friday. Or in some of the Fresno Unified classes, they have a kind of homeroom period, and they could show it during the homeroom period or something else like that. So then, okay, who do you got to get approval from to do that, right? Just all of those logistical things that you got to think about. What resources will you need? Nothing is free. Or as my economics teacher would say, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody is paying for it somewhere, right? And you need to know how much it's going to cost, because you need to be able to tell people that. And hopefully you can say, but it's going to be worth it because, right? But the first thing you got to do is, okay, if I'm going to print these flyers, how much is the ink? How much does it cost to print? What kind of paper do we want it to be printed on so that it's easy for people to read? You know, who's going to make it? Are we asking a graphic designer? No, it's probably cost too much money. Let's do it ourselves, etc. You know, that kind of stuff. And then what research do you need to convince people? So we have our cycle and we have research before, and that's kind of like the general info research. This is research showing that your plan will be effective. Is there any research out there that says that infographics are a more effective way to communicate information to teenagers than, say, a regular poster? Is there any information out there saying that getting kids, you know, seeing people talk about their stories as gang members is going to deter gang membership? Is there any, like, whatever your project that you're doing, maybe it's a program, maybe it's something that's happening in some other state. What's their effect? The biggest one I have, for example, for this is that I had a student, so CART is half Clovis Unified, half Fresno Unified, and they all come together and are mixed in the class. So it's really great because I had a group of kids who were like friends, and they went to all their different graduations at like 5 different high schools one year. And of course it breaks down stereotypes, because the Fresno kids are like, oh, all the Clovis people are rich and snooty, and all the Fresno people are gang members, which is horrible, and it's not true. So the kids get to know that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, it's the stereotypes. Stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. So we had this thing on campus called, that Clovis Unified has, called CSI groups, and it's Clovis Support Intervention Groups. And it's a curriculum where kids can basically get a support group for mental health issues, for things that they're dealing with. And that year we happened to have enough students, sadly, to form a grief group. And we had a student from Fresno Unified from Bullard who had just lost her mom. And she was able to be part of that grief group because she was a CART student, and Clovis Unified can't just offer it to only Clovis Unified students, right? And she said that that is what helped her make it through her junior year after losing her mom. And she's like, why doesn't Fresno offer this? Nobody at my homeschool knew what was going on. Nobody at my homeschool checked in on me. They need this. So they talked to the Clovis intervention lady, and it's a curriculum from a woman made in Arizona. And teachers they're not therapists, it's just like a support group. And they found out from her data that once Clovis instituted the support groups, that they increased attendance for those kids suffering from those issues by like 50%, which is ADA money. So I was like, hey, this is how much it costs, but how much are they gonna save in ADA, right? And schools care about that. So it's thinking about, what effect is this gonna make on people?
Oh, I forgot I do have a video sound. Oh, no. Yes, I do. So this is just a quick video, a TED Talk that I show the kids on how to change people's minds, kind of talking, getting them prepared and ready.
Linda is looking at John, who's not married. Is someone who's married looking at someone who's not married? Take a moment to think about it. Most people answer that there's not enough information to tell, and most people are wrong. Linda must be either married or not married. There are no other options. So in either scenario, someone married is looking at someone who's not married. When presented with the explanation, most people change their minds and accept the correct answer, despite being very confident in their first responses. Now let's look at another case. A 2005 study by Brendan Nyan and Jason Reifler examined American attitudes regarding the justifications for the Iraq War. Researchers presented participants with a news article that showed that no weapons of mass destruction had been found. Yet many participants not only continued to believe that WMDs had been found, but they even became more convinced of their original views. So why do arguments change people's minds in some cases and backfire in others? Arguments are more convincing when they rest on a good knowledge of the audience, taking into account what the audience believes, who they trust, and what they value. Mathematical and logical arguments like the dinner party brain teaser work because even when people reach different conclusions, they're starting from the same set of shared beliefs. In 1931, a young unknown mathematician named Kurt Gödel presented a proof that a logically complete system of mathematics was impossible. Despite upending decades of work by brilliant mathematicians like Bertrand Russell and David Hilbert, the proof was accepted because it relied on axioms that everyone in the field already agreed on. Of course, many disagreements involve different beliefs that can't simply be reconciled through logic. When these beliefs involve outside information, the issue often comes down to what sources and authorities people trust. One study asked people to estimate several statistics related to the scope of climate change. Participants were asked questions such as, how many of the years between 1995 and 2006 were one of the hottest 12 years since 1850? After providing their answers, they were presented with data from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, in this case showing that the answer was 11 of the 12 years. Being provided with these reliable statistics from a trusted official source made people more likely to accept the reality that the Earth is warming. Finally, for disagreements that can't be definitively settled with statistics or evidence, making a convincing argument may depend on engaging the audience's values. For example, researchers have conducted a number of studies where they've asked people of different political backgrounds to rank their values. Liberals in these studies, on average, rank fairness, here meaning whether everyone is treated in the same way, above loyalty. In later studies, researchers attempted to convince liberals to support military spending with a variety of arguments. Arguments based on fairness, like that the military provides employment and education to people from disadvantaged backgrounds, were more convincing than arguments based on loyalty, such as that the military unifies a nation. These three elements, beliefs, trusted sources, and values, may seem like a simple formula for finding agreement and consensus. The problem is that our initial inclination is to think of arguments that rely on our own beliefs, trusted sources, and values. And even when we don't, it can be challenging to correctly identify what's held dear by people who don't already agree with us. The best way to find out is simply to talk to them. In the course of discussion, you'll be exposed to counterarguments and rebuttals. These can help you make your own arguments and reasoning more convincing. And sometimes, you may even end up being the one changing your mind. Want to polish up your communication skills? Check.
Okay, so we're actually going to pause for a break because I know everybody's getting antsy and I don't like to talk at people for more than like 45 minutes straight at a time. You're making your short direct, this is exactly what we want to do, here's exactly what we need. Yeah, maybe it costs a little bit of money, but we're going to get such and such in exchange. Here's how you're going to do it, and here's the evidence that's going to work for you, right? Sorry, I left the clicker on the table. Okay, so brainstorming an idea. I always tell kids, because some kids are just like, we have no idea where to start. It's just so big, it's just so much, we've learned so many different things. So obviously, that's where you teachers come in, right? We're after school people. You want to try and help them narrow it down to something that they can affect change in. Something I like to say is, I was like, well, you guys did research into current policies. Are there policies in other school districts that you think should be in your school district? Is there a program that's offered by a local nonprofit that you think should come into your school? Those are easy places to start, right? Yeah. Maybe you've already researched your current school, but you want to look at other school districts in the area, or you want to Google, like, schools that do blank, and you can find it in another state even, right? But you can hopefully get an example of what you want to do. Or you can try and brainstorm a plan that does not exist at all yet, which a lot of the kids like to try to do, and then they sometimes hit a wall. So, step 2, test out the plans. Now, obviously, you can't test them out fully, but you can think in your mind, okay, what are going to be the obstacles, right? What are going to be the pitfalls? What do we need to look out for? Maybe do some initial research into your plan. Is it already happening, right? Like with the group that wanted the school board kid on the school board for Clovis Unified, and then they interview a board member and they're like, yeah, we already have that. So now we got to pivot, right? Friends, pivot. So you want to look at it, how much it might cost, because some plans might be cost prohibitive, right? You're going to come in and you're going to say, okay, it's going to cost you $2 million and it's not going to save you any money. Maybe we need to rethink that. What benefits will it produce? If it's going to cost a lot of money, I think the CSI program plans, they said it would cost like $1,700 per school site, which the kids were like, oh my God, that's so much money. But when they approached an actual school person, they're like, that's actually not that much. That's pretty cool, especially for the benefits it will produce, right? So if you have an expensive plan, if you have a plan or otherwise, you want to talk about what benefits it will produce. And if you're looking and testing out a plan and it's not going to have that many benefits, or the benefits aren't really provable, that's a problem. Maybe you need to go back and pivot to a different plan. Look for research saying it will work. If you cannot find any research saying it will work, it might not work, right? Look to see if somebody else is already doing it somewhere else, all of that kind of different kind of stuff. So this is a process where the kids are going to go back and forth. They're going to brainstorm an initial plan, they're going to test it out, they're going to be like, oh, toss that one. They're going to brainstorm an initial plan, they're going to test it out, oh, this one might work, right? So we are going to do it together on a topic that I tried for years to get kids to do and nobody wanted to do it, but we're going to do it. We're going to talk about food deserts, and I have a little video about food deserts in the Central Valley first.
No matter what result you're hoping for, when you need to be sure, choose Clear Blue Digital, a unique combination of air guard features and over 99% accurate. Clear Blue, for results you can trust.
Here in Central California, farmers produce almost half of the country's fruits, nuts, and vegetables. But lower-income families in many local neighborhoods struggle to find affordable, fresh, and healthy food. Action News reporter Linda Ha joins us now live in the studio with a look at this problem. Linda?
Warren, good evening. Our ABC-owned TV station's data journalism team released this new map today. These areas in yellow, Fresno, Firebaugh, Mendota, are neighborhoods where a large portion of the residents are low income and have less access to supermarkets. As you can see, food insecurity is a big problem across Central California.
When it comes to gardening,
this is green greens, those are white greens.
Not everyone has a yard to grow fruits and vegetables.
I live in a low-income apartment. We don't have any space to grow. This is our only chance to grow. There is a lot more people like me.
Lou Lee tends to his veggies at the Alratka Community Garden in Fresno a few times a week.
Yeah, since 2014.
He says Hmong families depended on farming for survival in Laos and Thailand.
It's pretty much you farm or you don't get food. You starve.
But here, he grows his own vegetables to avoid harmful pesticides, save money, and have fresh and healthy food.
Right now, everything is so high. Maybe on bundle, before it was like $1 a bundle. Now it's up to like $3 or $4 a bundle.
Around the corner from Lee, Steiner Cha and his mother pay the city $35 a year to use the community garden to grow Asian herbs not easily found at grocery stores.
She'll come and pick vegetables that she needs so that she doesn't have to go to the store and go buy it, because sometimes vegetables get kind of expensive.
For people who do live near a grocery store, a UC Merced study finds many can't afford it.
Hunger is a hidden epidemic right here in Central California. 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 3 kids don't know where the next meal is coming from.
Another complication, the cost of food in general is up 4.6% from a year ago. That means this year's Thanksgiving dinner could be the most expensive in the history of the holiday. Several factors are to blame: supply chain problems, labor shortages, bad weather, and inflation. In the studio tonight, Linda Ha, ABC 30 Action News.
It's a big problem, right? Not only do communities often have no access to grocery stores because grocery stores won't build in certain neighborhoods, right? When they do have access to grocery stores, those grocery stores are really expensive and out of reach. I did a thing, so I was in AmeriCorps back in the day up in Humboldt County, and one of the things that they had us do was an exercise with food stamps and how to make the food stamps stretch to, because I was on food stamps while I was in AmeriCorps, how to make the food stamp stretch to fit the protein and nutritional needs. And it's so much cheaper to buy the cruddy stuff, right? To buy the chips, to buy the soda, to buy the other things than it is to buy actually healthy vegetables. So then you have the problem of gardening. Everyone's like, well, just make a garden. Well, low income places, a lot of places. It was funny, up in Humboldt, everything is so green and everybody has access to everything. I remember a professor coming in and talking to us about how everybody needs to do a garden. And I'm like, what about those people who can't? They have no place to garden, right? So you saw one solution is the possibility of community gardens, and I know $35 a year doesn't sound like very much, but to some low-income people, it still is. So it's still a barrier, right? Or they have to live near a space that provides a community garden or other things like that. So right now at your tables, and if anybody who's alone wants to join another table, I want you to try and brainstorm a few things that we could do to help people in those food deserts get access to healthy food. Go. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. You guys had your hand up really nice and ready. What's some of your ideas?
Brian, what are some of our ideas?
Thank you. Yeah, Brian.
Here, I'm gonna pass the mic to you.
Oh, I don't need it.
Okay.
I really
You
don't.
got teacher voice.
Well, I'll just start out. Having lived in another country and dealing with other situations, namely like earthquakes in Peru, is the country I was in. They have parks that have underground areas for food and water and things like that in case of a massive earthquake. So they're prepping themselves for that situation. And here, we need to try to zone things out to make these community gardens a little more available in areas that need that. And now we are a district that has 3 different communities, the little community of Easton, West Fresno, and rural Fresno County that all have different situations. So, I mean, zoning might be a different situation.
Yeah, no, zoning is, I mean, that's a huge thing, talking to kids.
We have a variety of ideas that I think would all work together, but it would be a bit of a big machine. We're a unique school in the fact that we're still new, so a lot of our property is undeveloped, so making a community garden for our campus would be great. But Suzanne also pointed out that, who does it in Fresno?
Yeah, there's a variety of, a couple of elementary schools that we're aware of in Fresno already, and you're saying you can go to these other districts and find out what they're doing, that are partnered with some local growers, and they take the food that doesn't go to market, the fresh, and then they hold these weekly, with these vouchers with the families, they hold these weekly farmers markets at the school, where the food is provided and the parents can come get fresh there. But we were talking about in our school district, because of the ways our lines have been drawn for equity, we have a group of parents that live maybe 9 to 10 miles away and often don't have transportation.
Oh, yeah.
So also taking that same concept, putting it in one of our school vans or 2, and going to that community as well and finding a location that we could also offer that same thing to families from our school in their home neighborhood.
Hey, you want to save a whale? You know, I want to go over to Pismo. You know, but no, let them discover these things and help them with the resources so that it's not you championing the idea or it ends up on your desk, right? Have the kids engage in dialogue and plan these and talk these out. And did you guys know about Greenberg Elementary? Greenberg started that farmers market after we went in their class and went through values on there, and then we contacted the Fresno County Office of Education, their program over there, to begin to help them. Fifth graders came up with the idea in their neighborhood, and they were making so much money, they didn't know what to do with it. They said, we have a profit, what do we do with a profit? And so they end up donating their profit to the Fresno Rescue Mission. So great things come out of this when kids have their own voice.
Yes, and I will say that something that I typically do with my kids, because a lot of kids, you'll have some kids who are very passionate about a certain topic right off the bat, right? But you're gonna have a lot of other kids who are like, I don't know. So one of the things that I have them do is I actually have them explore area nonprofits websites. I have, like I said, I created a list and it's got the logo and the mission and then the link to the website. And I have them do kind of just an explore thing, because then they can see, oh, there's nonprofits on this and there's nonprofits on that. I never considered that as a problem. And it's a nice place to start to give kids ideas. And then those kids who are really passionate, I often give them the chance to make a presentation to the class about their topic that they're super passionate about and try and recruit people over to their way of thinking. Briefly, and we're gonna finish this up in the afternoon session after lunch, I just wanna show you a couple of documents that can help you get right? So once they've figured out that who, when, where, when, why, and we're going to do this in the afternoon, so you'll get to see it in action. You know, so I think the example I have up here is like selling lemonade, like you're going to make a lemonade stand, very basic, right? You're going to need 3-ounce Dixie cups. You're going to need, where are you going to get them from? Well, we source them from Target or Walmart or wherever is cheapest. I have the kids look up it online, you know, where can you get it. For print shop stuff, if you do it at school, it's nice because you can see how much the in-house print shop charges, which is usually a little cheaper than like Kinko's or Xerox or whatever. Then you go, okay, what's the cost of the individual item? How many of that item do we need? And then what's that total cost? And then you do that for each thing that you need, and then you get down and you get your total cost area for the project. And in mine, but this is also really easy, there are so many pie chart and chart like template things you can find online, or if you're savvy with Word or Excel, you can make your own. But making the charts as you go along with the kids, then they can use them later in their presentation and it looks all fancy, etc. Just ideas. And then I also have a space then for monetary benefits and the source of information that shows it's going to be a monetary benefit, and then non-monetary benefits and any charts or graphs that they can find or create for both of those to show what it's going to cost. And then I actually have the kids kind of summarize in paragraph language what that is. So then one of the things that I've had kids create in the past is a policy recommendation report. And what you do is you go through and you have them do the research, and then they write a paragraph on the research. You have them go through and do, you know, a policy research, and you write a paragraph on what available policies are already there. And you have them go through and do each thing, and at the end you can just pop it in, and it's a report that you can hand to somebody, and it looks really fancy, and maybe it has just a one page with the who, what, when, where, why that you can pull out if they don't have time, right?
About what you've heard so far and how you might want to implement this, what concerns you might have. But first, if you're like me, I was starting to slow down a little bit. So what I'm going to ask you to do, oh, and also I think there's an advantage to meeting some new people. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is stand up. Stand up. And so there's a little experiment in civil behavior. You're going to find another chair at another table. Everybody just move around and sit down at a different table. You can leave your stuff, you can come back to it for lunch, but we want you to just get a little bit of exercise, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, and find another chair where you can sit down, and then introduce yourselves to the people who are at that chair. All right, we have some early adopters here. Go. Everybody have a seat.
And I want to hear 3 things you
Introduce yourselves.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
That's fine.
Yeah, I really, it's like the best thing you did to me. Yeah, it makes you feel uncomfortable to move. But it gives you skills to network. Yes, absolutely. And you make good people. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay, we've got a few people still finding a seat. Raise your hand if you need more time to introduce each other. Okay, let's go then. Here's the question. The question is for your group, and then we're going to we're going to let you talk to each other for 10 minutes, and then we're going to ask you to report out, because we really want to hear what your concerns are, what your questions are. I mean, we've presented a lot of information to you today, and we're really challenging you to identify students who might want to participate in some kind of civic engagement. We're inviting you to bring the State Seal of Civic Engagement to your school. There's all kinds of aspects of that. You've seen a little introduction to the curriculum. So what we're asking you to do in your circle group, in your table group, is to identify what questions you have and what concerns you have, what obstacles might be preventing you from going back tomorrow and implementing this. How can we help you? What services could we provide that would help you to be successful? Those are the things that we want you to talk about now. So you have 10 minutes. Any questions? Go.
All the partisan things going on, and that's in your classroom. Apart from CRT and school board meetings and LGBTQ issues and everything, there's your students, right? Who are really wanting to know how to impact society for the good, right? And to make a change for that. There is no issue that they can't handle or deal with the proper skill and training. None. And that makes me grateful. And so just before we go to lunch, I want you all just to kind of, what you got for me? Okay. Just kind of hold your hands out like this. And I just want you to think about something that you're really grateful for. Whether it's in your school, in your home, in your life. Take a second to do that. And then on the count of 3, we're going to shout really loud, thank you. So think about that. 1, 2, 3. Thank you! Thank you. All right, let's get, what's the stuff with lunch, please?
I learned it from a friend of mine at Fresno County Office of Education named Jim Coiner, and we use it every year with students. Some of you, have any of you done continuum? Yes. Is it like crossing the line? I'll show you. So it's a way to facilitate dialogue, and it's structured in such a way that you you don't end up saying, I don't agree with you, you're wrong, that kind of, there's no confrontation at all. But it does give everyone an opportunity to share their ideas about a question. So, the facilitator, we have a couple questions here. I ask the question, and then I create two extreme answers, two opposite answers, and I explain it, and then I give you, I say go, and you take a position on the continuum. You might go all the way to one extreme, you might go to the middle, you're not sure, you might go to this extreme. It's a continuum. You can go anywhere you want, okay? But and so the expectation is everyone is going to take a position physically, but no one has to speak. You don't have to say, the reason I'm standing here is because, and give a reason. You may. So what I'll do is I'll ask the question, I'll give you a minute to take your position, and then I'll say, does anyone want to share why they're standing there? And you start by saying, the reason I'm standing here is because, and then you make an I statement, and you give your reason. Now the other part of it is, we're asking you to keep an open mind, and you may hear something that somebody says that convinces you that, wow, that makes sense. I think they're right. And so then you would move toward that person's position, right? So we encourage you to have an open mind. We encourage you to move if you feel that it's justified, okay?
As you move, and as you make up your mind, do it silently.
Right.
Don't carry on a conversation with anyone else. Hey, what are you doing? Just quietly do what you're going to do.
Okay, so first question is just a sample so you can see how it works. I wish that I could give you a free vacation, a 5-day trip on a vacation, and you would have to choose between going to the coast or going to the mountains. So just think about, would you rather have vacation on the coast, Pismo or Monterey or wherever your favorite place to go on the coast is, or would you rather go up in the mountains, cabin, fishing, hiking?
Glamping.
What was that? Okay. So those are the choices. So if you would rather go to the mountains, you would not. All right. We're still learning. That's why this is practice. If you say mountains, you would go all the way over there. If you say, I would just really like to be on the beach vacation, you would go all the way over here, or anywhere in between. Any questions? And again, as Steve said, no talking. This is silent, taking your position silently. Okay, go. Right. So we know where you stand. It looks pretty evenly distributed. Anyone want to share a reason?
I saw that.
Yes.
You okay?
The reason I'm standing here is because I hate sand between my toes.
So if that reminds you of that feeling and you agree, just keep in mind you can shift. How about on this side? Yes.
The reason I'm standing here is because I love sand.
Hey!
Yeah! We got one! We got one!
We got a little movement here. Okay. All right. So, does everybody understand how it works? All right. So we'll get to some other students of their position. Okay. So this question has to do with student civility since the pandemic. So there's some people who say that it's drastically changed since the pandemic. And other people say, it was a problem before, it's a problem now, there isn't that much difference. Okay, so the question is, has the pandemic decreased civility of So if you say, civility has decreased significantly since the pandemic, you would come all the way over here. If you say it's really pretty much the way it was before, you would go all the way to that extreme. Everybody understand? Okay, go. Okay, so over there, it's a decline. Over here, it's pretty much stayed the same. There's a big group in the middle. Okay, who wants to share? You first, and then you.
So working with
Reason I'm standing here.
the reason I'm standing here is because working with students, I've worked with kids from elementary all the way to high school, and after COVID, I realized that some of my students before that would just like not care about anything, kind of disrespectful. It kind of taught them how to date. You know, every kid kind of, we don't really know what goes on in their homes, and I realized with some of my kids, some of their families did go through COVID and or other issues, and kind of taught them how to step up and to grow and mature up, right? And while with some of my other kids, it kind of traumatized them to where they kind of just showed it back and then they kind of just quiet.
So both. That's
So
why
I'm in
you're
the middle, yeah.
Okay, go.
I'm standing here because the question is too complicated to go either direction.
Okay.
Because I've seen kids become overly civil to the point they won't voice an opinion at all for fear of being canceled. And then I have the other extreme that's kind of the reactionary to that, where they want to say things just to piss people off. But I think the majority of the kids have just stopped caring about anything.
Wow. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, I'll wait. Yeah. Okay, I don't know if I'm standing in my place or not. That's not a new experience. I'm standing here because two reasons. One, I'm exhausted by us blaming things on the pandemic. So it's like a silent protest, someone silent protest. Two, I'm not a social scientist, but I think young people, if they're not being civil, all they're doing is responding to their culture that they're nothing to do. Matter of fact, they're better than the adults. So I don't buy the premise at all.
You can move. You can move if you want. It's your vote. You don't talk to anyone. You just move quietly.
Yeah.
Two.
Yes.
Oh, one there, one over there. Okay, a little closer to the edge. All right.
Oh, three.
Another shift. Oh, okay. So you kind of get the idea of what's happening. Imagine this in your classroom, because this is what you're going to be leading and doing. Okay.
All right, next question. Can we teach civility? Can we teach students how to be respectful, how to disagree respectfully, how to resolve conflicts, how to solve problems that come up, interpersonal type issues? Can we teach students to have a high level of civility? If you say yes, you're going to go over here. Wait. Say go. Is it difficult? I know, but I want to make sure everybody understands the two sides. So yes would be over here. We can teach kids everything they need to know about civility. Or over here, hey, isn't that the parents' responsibility? There's only so much we can do in a public school. They tell us we're supposed to teach all these things, and that's just one more thing. So you understand that extreme, and this extreme is yes, we can do it, and we should be doing it, and there's no reason why we won't. Go.
This way.
Don't care one side or the other. Don't listen to them.
I set you up.
Who would like to share? Okay, go.
Okay, I'm standing here because I can understand where a lot of people say like teachers, I even heard it that, well, I can't teach your kid everything, I'm here to just teach them education. But part of education is also teaching a kid how to be respectful, teaching a kid about how to be civically engaged in their community. And we also have to kind of understand, like, a lot of parents, like for me, my mom was a single mother. She did not have the time to be sitting here and teaching me about, like, civility. Like, this woman was working, right? But at the end of the day, parents still do their part to teach your kid how to not be disrespectful, right? Like, I know if my mom got a call from school that I'm acting up, I'm getting, you know what I mean? Like, I'm getting some type of lesson. So, at the same time, I feel like, I feel like, but at the same time, I feel like because you're sitting there with the kids for like 8 hours a day, if a teacher's really there, really paying attention, I know we have a lot of kids, but you know, when you see something and you talk to the kid, and instead of just ignoring them, you know, you kind of just sit them down like, hey, what's going on? You have that conversation with them. You're also a mentor. You're not just a teacher, but you're also a mentor. You're an educator, right? You're there to teach them not just about what's in the textbooks, but also what's going on around them in the world. And so that's why I'm standing there, because I feel like, yeah, the parents can teach, but we are the teachers. We are the ones that's supposed to educate them and actually guide them in that path to success with the help of the parents.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm standing here because I initially thought I was going to go all the way that way, because I thought you were going to say that side is no, it can't be taught, like, you just have to either know it or not. But you said that that side is the parents have to teach it. And I'm here because ideally the parents and the teachers are a team, and we work together to teach what the kids need to know in that area.
Okay, thank you. Back there, up in front.
I'm standing here because if I went on the other side of the wall, you wouldn't see me. I don't think saying that it is our responsibility in any way negates that the parents have their role. We just have no control over that role. The one thing we can control is ourselves. And there is no education without academic discourse, period.
Without what, I'm sorry?
Without academic discourse.
Gotcha.
Respectful.
Respectful academic discourse.
Go ahead. No, you have, over there, go ahead.
Well, I just think we have to accept that responsibility because students have varying degrees of access to that, and as a person who wants to continue to see democracy in play and who's seen it come down, it is our role, and I think you model that in an entire school culture, and we need to adopt that and understand that is our greatest role. I can teach curriculum, but my greatest role is to create citizens, and so, and allowing students the opportunities to grow and fail and grow again in this environment is our responsibility. And as a committed parent who knows a bunch of other committed parents are in the room, of course it's my responsibility as a parent to do that for my children. But as an educator, it's my number one.